Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Ma'ale Adumim in Israel. The imagination is the wild card of the human mind. We know that the intelligence is a somewhat reliable source of rational thought. We sense that the emotions allow us to interact with the world on a level of feeling rather than thought. We understand that the will is our source for the uniquely human element of choice, which to this day defies any logical mechanism. We have a hazy idea of the reality of the conscience with its ability to steer us around moral problems. We even believe that we have a vague notion of what consciousness is, despite our inability to define it and to understand what it does. But when it comes to the imagination, we haven't a clue. Everyone is familiar with the imagination. We all have experience with dreaming and with daydreaming. We have all let our minds roam, allowing the imagination to take us where it will, with little to no input from the more grounded aspects of the mind. We know that it works even if we don't encourage it, sometimes feeding the mind images or ideas that seem to emerge from nowhere. But if we were asked to explain the imagination or to present a theory on how it works, we would probably admit that we haven't the vaguest idea of even the basics. When did human beings first develop an imagination? When did they start developing one now? Will the imagination survive the automation and mindlessness that will inevitably arise from the flood of AI tools coming down the pipeline? Nobody knows the answer to any of these questions. We can only imagine an imagination slowly evolving in the primitive minds of early human beings until one day it was there. We can easily imagine it developing in the mind of a baby, watching it take over much of the attention and the interests of the baby. We can speculate from here till tomorrow on what will happen when we outsource much of our mind to some computerized substitute. But by the time that happens to any serious degree, the very question of what happens to the imagination will probably be irrelevant. There is no question that we are fascinated by our own imaginations and frequently taken aback by the imaginations of others. We rarely wonder what exactly our own imagination actually is or from where it gets its amazing images and ideas. Do they come from us, meaning somewhere in the brain, as any scientific explanation must insist? Or do they come from outside, wherever that may be? These questions, of course, apply equally well to dreams, that repository of pure imagination, unadulterated by any rational thought and frequently devoid of emotions, will, and conscience. But dreams do what we expect them to do, so we take them for granted. When it comes to the imagination in the waking state of the mind, we are not so forgiving. If we ever take the time to recognize what is really happening, it is not unusual to be somewhat shocked by what we evoke. Sometimes we may wonder how it was possible for our own minds, so reliable and so predictable under normal functioning, to be so erratic and unpredictable when under the sway of the imagination. But such is the human mind. It does what it does whenever and however it does it. The images and the ideas may be fantastical and they may be quite down to earth. It may present things that are irrelevant to our present circumstances, and it may present solutions to our most pressing problems. It is a wild card, and there is no telling what wild or brilliant ideas or images it may bring. It is there occupying a central, if unpredictable, place in the mind, and it's a good bet it was there from the time human beings first learned to think like human beings. This week's Parsha is called Balak. It stands a good chance of being the strangest Parsha in the Torah. The title is the name of a person who happened to have been the king of the ancient nation of Moab at the time the Israelites were passing near his land. He was afraid they would destroy his country as they had already conquered the nations to the north of him. To defend against this dreaded possibility, he, along with the elders of the nearby nation of Midian, went to the eastern land of Petor to hire the services of a man named Bilaam to curse the Israelites. This Bilaam, it seems, had earned a reputation as a sorcerer whose blessings resulted in actualized blessings and whose curses resulted in actualized curses. In other words, he knew what he was doing. This entourage met with Bilam in his hometown, and he told them to wait because he had to check with Hashem to see if he was permitted to get involved in such a dubious project. He was told by God that under no uncertain terms could he participate. They left, but when Balak heard the negative response, he sent back other representatives who were more important than the first group. He hoped that Bilam would be enticed by the increased honor shown to him. In the end, the ploy worked. God told him that he was permitted to go with the men, but that he must only do that which God spoke to him. As if this story wasn't strange enough up to this point, it gets even more bizarre. Bilam wakes the next morning and saddles his donkey to go on the journey to Moab. God, despite giving him permission the previous night to go, now became angry with him that he went. An angel of Hashem, unseen by Bilam, stands in the path he was traveling on. The donkey notices the angel, but Bilam is oblivious to it. Bilam whacks his donkey to get it moving, but the angel then stands in the middle of a narrow path in a vineyard with no room to move around it. The donkey, attempting to get around it, presses up against the wall, squashing Bilam's leg. He again whacks the donkey. This happens a third time in a narrower path, and the donkey is forced to simply crouch down. Bilam's anger reaches a crescendo, and he hits the donkey with his staff. At that point, the Torah states, Hashem opened the mouth of the donkey, and it speaks to Bilam, asking him what it did that Bilam hit it these 3 times. Bilam, not amazed by his talking donkey, answers that he felt the donkey was mocking him. He then tells the donkey that he would have killed it if he had a sword. The donkey then forces Bilam to admit that it was always faithful to him and had never done him any harm. Then Hashem finally opens Bilam's eyes, and he sees the angel standing in front of him with a sword in its hand. The angel asks Bilam why he hit the donkey and tells him that he was there to swerve him off the road. He explains that the donkey saw him, but that Bilam was unable to. He even goes so far as to say that he would have killed Bilam and not harmed the donkey. Bilam, sensing this spiritual obstacle in his path, offers to turn around and to go back. The angel then repeats what Hashem had told him earlier. He can go, but only speak that which God will speak to him. The rest of the parsha is Bilam being brought to various places by Balak to attempt to curse the Israelites, but only blessing them each time. Balak's frustration builds up through all of this until he finally lets Bilam have it for blessing the Israelites instead of cursing them. He says that he had promised to honor Bilam, but God prevented him from being honored in any way. After a final round of unasked for blessings, both of them go back to their homes, and the story ends. Aside from everything else, this business with the donkey is about as strange as things get in the Torah. It's true that there was a talking snake in the Garden of Eden, but it is easy to miss that as a metaphor for the urges and desires generated within the mind. This donkey doesn't seem to fit in anywhere in the normal scheme of things. What are we to make of all this? Some Jewish commentaries write this whole story off as a dream of Bilam. While this explains the stranger elements of it, there is nothing in the text to back up the idea that this was all a dream. Others take it literally, like Bilam speaking to a regular person and receiving normal replies. But this was a donkey. The donkey saw the angel and Bilam didn't. How could that be normal? There is a third possibility. It could be that this was the biblical equivalent of what is now called magical realism. This is a genre of literature and art in which elements of the very real and the very fantastical are merged together. Fantasy books tend to be filled with magical realism. If it is done well, the magical part seems so real that we have a hard time telling what the border is between the real and the magical. The two domains are supposed to fit together perfectly so that each contributes to the other and they combine to make a picture which is more vivid than normal reality and less fantastical than the pure supernatural. Perhaps this is what is going on here. Perhaps none of this ever really happened in the real world. But by the same token, it wasn't a dream of Bilam's. It was a story told by the Torah to illustrate a point. But there was a very real aspect to all of this. It did go on in the mind of Bilam, and he experienced it as vividly as if it had happened to him in real life. This was, in a sense, a kind of prophetic vision on the part of Bilam. The Torah depicts it in the way that it does to illustrate how real it was to him. He lived through these experiences with the donkey and with the angel, even if it never actually happened to him in normal reality. He either imagined these experiences or they were placed in his mind by some divine source. This was magical realism happening to a human being and not invented by an author. It was created to drive home a central point to Bilam, that he was not in charge here and that he would only be able to do or say that which God allowed him to. The fact that the donkey saw the angel and he didn't only drove home the point that he was not the one with any great insight into the workings of the spiritual world. Even a donkey could see more than he could. What was the point of all this? Assuming magical realism is the correct description of what was going on, the Torah is using it to tell both Bilam and us something very important. We don't know everything there is to know about the world. We are subject to our minds to understand what we do, and much of that comes through the filter of the imagination. In the imagination, there may be talking donkeys and angels with swords drawn, threatening to kill us. In a sense, this is just as real as reality, but only to the person experiencing it. Those ideas and those images, however fantastical and magical they may be, are our private window into a world of our own making, which may include elements of the divine. Sometimes what we experience there contains important messages for our non-imaginary world. The border between these two worlds is sometimes hazy, as the two worlds overlap more than we may expect. We may be highly disturbed or pleasantly surprised by the influence one has on the other. But this is all part of life with the human mind. Shabbat Shalom.